My name is Dane Gardner. I'm a software engineer at Porch. And this is a 25-minute entry-level talk on our scalable closed-loop communication system. At the end of the talk, I'm going to have a URL to the slides, so you don't have to take pictures if you don't want to. Feel free if you do, but you can go and download it after. So this talk will focus on what Porch is and why communications are important to us. Then how we went from a basic call tracking system and expanded using number masking, text messaging, and web integration web integration to help us tie everything together and where we're headed in the future. Porch.com is a tech company located in Seattle. We have about 350 employees. A quarter of us are developers. We take a data-driven approach to problem solving. And like any good startup, we throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. I've been at Porch for a little over a year now, and I've worked mostly on the communications platform products. It's one of the coolest jobs I've ever had. So at Porch, we strive to connect homeowners with professionals to get their projects completed. We're not just a directory where you can find a plumber or a roofer. We put a lot of effort in getting the right pro connected to the homeowner to get their project completed. If anybody saw, I believe her name was Elisa's talk at 2 o'clock in this room, Owl List is very much what we do. Challenges that we face, pro response rates to homeowner project requests are really low. And it's one of our major driver for internal metrics. If they're not talking, they're not getting their projects completed, and we're not doing our job. Visibility into contact events or lack of contact events allows us to react appropriately. If a homeowner doesn't get an immediate contact, we can cast a wider net to more pros to try and get elicit a response. Failing that, we can at least let them know that we were unsuccessful and they need to try some other venue. Currently, our biggest problem is getting pros to actually respond to a homeowner's project request. And we face a lot of challenges trying to get this done at scale. You can't just go and call all of these pros and tell them, call the homeowner. This will always be a problem for us, and we'll always be striving to fix it. So call tracking, as you may already know, allows you to determine where a phone number was seen by the caller and is typically used for maximizing marketing dollars. Did they see your ad on Google? Did they see it on Facebook? Did test B convert them over test A? That sort of thing. For Porch, by assigning multiple phone numbers to each of our pros and then advertising each number with a different partner, we're able to determine which partner got our pro the lead. With many of our pros out on job sites getting work done, so many of them end up using their cell phones as their point of contact. And because of this, we see advantages in hiding their actual phone number. We don't want to advertise the pro's mobile number on Google AdWords. They're going to get called by anybody and everybody. We're able to leverage our large pool of phone numbers to quickly identify spam callers as they traverse many unrelated numbers. You'll see a spam caller calling multiple pros, some roofers and plumbers and everything all throughout. And you can quickly identify that this is not a homeowner trying to call pros. This is obviously a spammer. We flag them as a spammer. We're also able to restrict calls to pros to certain hours. Getting calls at 2 a.m. on your cell phone sucks. Even if you're a pro, if you're a 24-hour plumber, that's totally fine. But if you're a roofer, probably not cool. Using the system, we can at least answer part of our biggest question with data gathering, which is, are pros actually picking up the phone when a homeowner calls them? Or more closely tied to our biggest goal, are we connecting homeowners with pros to get their projects completed? Ideally, all callers to our pros would be highly motivated homeowners with big budgets and want their project completed right away. But in reality, anybody and everybody calls our pros. Traffic pumpers, robo-dialers, spam callers, survey takers. And we need to block as much of that as we can. Generally speaking, we bin our calls into 3 categories: known good, unknown, and known bad. Good callers are obviously just passed directly through to the pro. But unknown callers we sort of handle specially. We do an IVR CAPTCHA, one of those please press 1 to be connected, that sort of thing. Bad callers are dropped into a black hole, or at least that's how I like to think of it. By design, our implementation allows us to fine-tune our spam filtering on a per-channel basis. We find that some channels have different caller behavior, and we need to react to that appropriately. So somebody calling from an advertisement on Facebook versus an advertisement on your own website, their behaviors will be different. As our system matured, we realized quickly that we could glean a lot of good information from it. We know when and how often our pros are being called, if the pros are picking up, and we can leverage and share that data to better assist the pro in contacting homeowners. Using sentiment analysis, we let the pro know that we brought them that good lead, which is great, but is a little bit more complicated than it sounds. Imagine a pro getting a phone call from a robo-dialer at 1 a.m. We don't want to send them a text saying, hey, you know, this lead brought to you by Porch. That'd be really bad, right? Ends up with upset pros. So call tracking at scale can get very expensive. At our peak, we had 180,000 phone numbers. We've reduced that a bit. And there's other ways to reduce costs with this system. You can dynamically provision phone numbers as they're displayed on your website. So as somebody actually sees it, you purchase a number and assign it, and then age it out over time. The problem with that is when a scraper gets through your defenses and they look at 100,000 pages all at once, you just bought 100,000 phone numbers, which is really bad. We've had that happen, or it's not 100,000, but similar. 3/4 of our calls are determined to be bad, and we reject them. Whether they hit our IVR and they can't get past it, or they're known to be spam outright. So that means that we have a lot of people with a phone number list that runs down through all of our phone numbers. This ratio also means that SMS is nearly impossible. We've toyed with a few ideas at first and tried a few early trials, but all of them turned out to be too scary. Spam was crazy. We couldn't do it in a reliable and safe way where our pros would accept that. So even with all of this, the biggest weakness for us was that our system only gave us visibility in one direction, calls to the pro. And our biggest metric driver was pro responsiveness. We want to see it going the other way, to the homeowner. With homeowner complaints being that they submit a project and never get a call back. That's really bad. So with that in mind, sorry. Yeah, so last year, this is what our system looked like. Just a basic call tracking system. In November, we purchased a company called Fountain in the hopes that we could build out more of a robust communication system. Our first big step was to build a number masking system. By adding masking numbers as homeowners submit projects, we're able to gather data bidirectionally. So we're getting data in both directions. We're closing that loop. Since these numbers aren't advertised publicly, we know who both parties are, we can relax our spam filtering, which is really nice, and enable text messaging. So put simply, number masking is allowing bidirectional communication between two parties without either party knowing the other's true phone number. So the pro in this diagram has no idea what the homeowner's phone number really is, and vice versa. In our case, we could simply make a tracking number for the homeowner direction using our existing tracking number system. And a very early cousin to our current system attempted this, but it quickly grew out of control. When you're assigning static numbers to people, it gets kind of insane. We have I've heard stories that, and this happened before I was at Porch, I've heard stories that we purchased about 100,000 numbers in the first week. So needless to say, they shut that system down. After our acquisition of Fountain, we decided to have another go at it. And this new implementation turned out to be really effective. With number masking, we gained massive insight into lead value and pro responsiveness. Within hours of turning on the first system, we were really surprised that our pros are more responsive when conditions are just right for them, sort of a Goldilocks syndrome. Things like time of day or type of project can have a huge impact on when a pro responds. For example, despite a plumber advertising that they do repair, they may not respond as quickly to a $200 toilet repair job as they would a $15,000 bathroom remodel. So now that we have this visibility, we know which projects haven't received a contact within a certain period. And we can either try to find more pros or let the homeowner know that we've failed. So at Porch, each pairing of homeowner and pro are called a conversation. When a project is submitted, we create a conversation with masked numbers. When a call occurs with Twilio, you know the caller ID and the number that was dialed, you know where the incoming call is coming from, or coming to, I should say. From this, you can uniquely identify that conversation associated with that pair, which means you can route the call to the correct destination. Using this uniqueness to our advantage, we can overload phone numbers for multiple conversations. In this case, all three of those pros would dial the same phone number, but they would be routed to 3 different homeowners. A design constraint for our number masking system was that the connections needed to be long-lived. This would not scale well. With static number assignment, again, you end up buying way too many. By using multiplex numbers, we can essentially keep them forever. There's no reason to close that connection. And it scales really well. We were able to support 230,000 projects, 230,000 connections between a homeowner and a pro with just 600 phone numbers. Another great thing about number masking is that when a homeowner has hired a pro for their project, we can close the other conversations. So we distribute these projects to multiple pros, and when a pro is hired, we can close the other 3 or 4 pros. This way, the homeowner doesn't have to field calls that they don't want, and the homeowner doesn't waste the pro doesn't waste their time calling a homeowner who's obviously not going to hire them. Additionally, with this walled garden approach, we always know who the caller is before we can route the call. We cannot route the call without knowing who the caller is to get that unique identifier. So our spam filtering is, we don't really need it in this case. And finally, one of the best things that we get out of this is data. We're on track to have 1.5 million minutes of talk time this year. We turned the system on in December, and we're plugging away on it. We use a combination, or with the use of the combination of called number with the caller ID, however, There are some cases of ambiguity. You have to be careful to not assign the same masked number to the same person more than once. Because if they call, you don't know which conversation they're calling in relation to. One of the ways we get around that is prompting for an access code, or a PIN number, we call it. I think in some cases that we've seen, think about a pro that has several businesses, Bob's Plumbing and Heating, and Bob's Heating. They're 3 separate entities on Porch, but they all have the same phone number. And when they call in to a homeowner, they may get routed to the wrong one. So this is PINs are the only way to disambiguate who the caller actually is and route them to the right person. So one of the downsides of this is that most people don't even realize that they're on this system when they make these phone calls. They have no idea. They just get routed somewhere and it works. When they get prompted for PIN, it takes them out of that experience. Suddenly, something happened that they don't expect. We find that a lot of our calls, actually half of the calls that hang up on the prompt for PIN, the IVR prompt for PIN, call back within a few minutes with their PIN, because they hear the prompt, they freak out, they hang up, and then they look at the webpage, oh, there's the PIN number right next to the phone number I just dialed, and then they call back with that PIN. So, also, one of the biggest challenges we have here is trying to give the homeowner context. Without training, we can train our pros, but you can't train the homeowners. You're going to use your system maybe once or twice, and then they're gone. And if you're like me, I never answer the phone unless I know who's calling. And if it's a pro, I might answer it, I might not, I don't know. And a lot of our homeowners just don't answer the phone. We find that SMS, or at least our pros are finding that SMS is more and more important. So with this context problem in mind, we added web chat. This component integrated directly with our homeowners project management page. And this allows them to manage the communications between the pros that we found for their project all in one place. Context, again, is important. Homeowner confusion about who it was that just called them on that list of pros that we found for them is a real problem. We have seen instances where a homeowner gets a call from a pro. The pro introduces themselves very quickly, and then they have a conversation, and they hang up, and several hours later, the homeowner wants to call the pro back. They dial the wrong pro. They call the wrong pro because they don't remember which pro it actually was that called them initially. So there's no context there. They don't even know who it was that they talked to. With our web chat and project integration, they can see that context immediately. They know which pro it was that called them. They have the phone number there. They have the PIN. Also, with this web chat system, we can do cross-transport communications. So somebody could be sitting at the web interface chatting while the other person in the conversation is texting with them. And of course, we integrated we built this before we learned about Twilio's new Notify API. I wished I'd heard about it several months ago. So here is a simulation of a multi-transport, or what a multi-transport conversation looks like. You can see in the center pane there that John Doe Contracting has called our homeowner. They spoke for maybe 10, 15 minutes about the problem, the pro realized they needed a picture. The homeowner goes out, takes a picture of the roof that needs to be fixed, and texts it back to the pro. This was sent via MMS and integrated directly into the UI. John Doe calls them back several hours later. They talk again, probably figuring out a budget or something like that. And then John Doe goes and uses the web UI for letting the homeowner know that he has a proposal he'd like to send them. And this was an actual conversation that I scrubbed and anonymized. So this is actually going on in our system. So again, context is important, and this can be a very powerful way to convey it. However, it turns out that trying to convey that context to somebody in a meaningful way without any training, again, for the homeowner can be extremely difficult. And we're still learning how to fully leverage this system. It's brand new. So internally, we've been calling this system the connection system as we're adding more components onto it now, trying to get, again, the homeowner and the pro to connect. Right now, my teammates are back at Porch in Seattle working on breaking ground for integrating email, masked email, similar to how we do number masking into the system so that we can anonymize both the homeowner and pro through that. Going into the future, we have our sights set on several new technologies. We really want to get push notification set up on our mobile apps. That's almost definitely going to be our next step. And we're really excited about the Notify API. We may scrub some of what we've done and rebuild it using this because I'm certain they've put more hours into it than we can. Following that, we're still investigating video, WebRTC, and web voice technologies, see if we want to use those here. So to recap, I shared with you what Porch is, how important communications are to our core business. I discussed our call tracking system, how we started in 2015 with just this system, and some of the challenges we faced in getting all of the data we needed from only this system. Then I discussed the closed loop communication. I'm sorry, how we closed our open loop communications. Is that two? We were able to leverage Twilio's API to build a prototype in less than 2 weeks. That's right, the first prototype only took us 2 weeks, thanks to Twilio. But it was so hard to get right that it took us 2 more iterations and 3 months to complete it, to be able to roll it out completely. I talked about how we added web chat and are currently adding email and some of our future plans. I am a little early. I've got a little time, so I've got some anecdotes. I don't know if anybody's interested in hearing these things. I don't think I've ever heard anybody else do it. We first rolled out MMS or SMS and MMS with our number masking system. We noticed a conversation that was really big. We had no idea why there were 100 texts between this homeowner and pro, where everyone else was like 3 tops. So we dug in at the data to take a quick look to make sure that there was not an actual problem going on. Turned out they were flirting, which was interesting. I recently checked the database to see how far that had gone as number of conversations respecting their privacy. There were over 800 texts back and forth over 4 months, and it seemed like they were still talking today. They started in January, so totally awesome. So thank you for your time, and as promised, slide with the link.
Thanks again, Dane.